Bitchin. We're on episode
Four?
4?
Part two.
We left on a cliffhanger, so you know who we are. I want to get back into this. She made me stop talking.
I really did. I said, I was like, and that's why I didn't make the deal, because my dad made the deal, and I said, that's the end of part 1. And she was like,
And
I
was
hate you. Anyway, so
if
going
you
on
forgot, we're picking up at chapter 25. She just learned that he was not the primal of death that made the deal. And I was gonna say, can you imagine like she talks about it, the range of emotions you're having of like, it would have been easy to kill him because he made this deal and it's stupid, blah 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 blah. And then she's like, oh shit, he didn't want this either. And now I gotta kill him. Like, oh,
that is such a contradictory feeling, because she also cares about him, like on some level, like she's interested in him, so it's just even worse because it's like you were bred for this. Well, not bred, but you were, raised to do this thing. Anyway, so then she's like, oh, he died, and Ash is like, it is not often that a primal dies. The loss of a being so powerful can create a ripple effect that can even be felt in the mortal realm. Could even set in motion an event that has the potential to unravel the fabric that binds our realms together. The only way to prevent that from occurring is to have their power, their ether, transferred to another who can withstand it. That is what happened when my father died. All that was his transferred to me. The Shadowlands, the court, his responsibilities. Anyway, so Ash was alive when the deal was made. He was going through the culling.
He was young. We learned that barely going through the culling, because he was only 18, 19 years old.
Correct. Like, and so she asks about his mother, but she's like questioning it, like, does he have a mother? And he was like, do you think I was hatched? And we learned that his mother died during the birthing process, during birthing period. And she learns about godlings, and he explains that they are the offspring of a mortal and god. If a godling then has a child with a mortal, then that child would carry some mark upon them too, but they would not be a godling. It's like a whole breakdown of the different terms.
I also like that he even goes, like, he doesn't, like, because she's like, oh, did your father tell you why he like asked for a consort if he loved your mother? And even he doesn't know. He's like, I have no idea why he did it, why he would ask for a mortal as a consort. He died loving my mother. It made no sense. So that leaves you kind of sitting here like, what's going on?
So what are you doing? Exactly.
Yeah.
So then Eos, now my brain, it's Eos. I'm going Eos. Re-enters the chat, and so she can, like, Sarah's asking questions. Shocker, these women love their questions. And she like gives background about the culling and mortals, and how she learns that it's forbidden to ascend or to save them. And
wonder why.
Sarah's like, why? And then Eos is like, they would become what we call demis, a being with godlike power that was never meant to carry such a gift and burden. They are something else. Shocker. But Eos is also bringing her clothes and stuff, and I wrote, our girls hate dresses for real.
They really do.
And then Sarah's asking questions about Eos, and she goes, I once belonged to the court of Kithria. Sure. And Sarah goes, Maya, the primal of love, beauty, and fertility's court. And Eos is like, at one time I did serve her. And this is a very important moment, I think, because Sarah goes to leave the room, and she's like fighting, like, oh, like, did he lock me in here? Like, am I essentially a prisoner?
Right.
And she realizes that the door is unlocked, and that she's essentially free to wander, sort of.
Well, the door's unlocked, but there's still someone there.
Yeah. So she's like, she sees Ector standing guard, and they're kind of doing this back and forth, and he goes, I'm not entirely sure what you're supposed to do, and to be honest, I don't think even he knows what to do with you, because this is all like new, like they weren't really ready for this whole thing. So We go into chapter 26 and we're introduced to a new dragon whose name is Davina.
Love
Lovely
her
name, Davina.
emotionlessness.
Uh, and we see Mia Liesa
Mm.
enter the chat. And so then she's talking to Nyktos, and he alludes to being captive because they're doing their back and forth banter. Shocker. She gets more details about his mom, and her name was Mycella, and that her family descended from the court of Lotho, the primal Embrese's court. And he gives some background about how he can't visit his mom or like people because he risks destroying their soul. And he says, as the primal of death, I risk destroying the mortal soul if they're in my presence for any extended period of time, at least for those who have passed through judgment. That is a balance to prevent the primal of death from creating his or her version of life. There is no exact rule against it for gods or other mortals, but it wouldn't be wise. Visiting loved ones who have moved on can cause both the one living and the one who has passed to become stuck, to want what neither can have, whether that be to continue seeing their loved one or to return to the living. It even causes them to leave the veil. It can even cause them to leave the veil, and that does not end well. So it's very much like you see a checks and balances, which is something you notice that even though the checks and balances got forked up, there's some sort of divine intervention at some point.
Yeah.
And then we're introduced to Jadis. Do y'all remember who Jadis is? She's introduced in the other series. Barely. For 2 seconds.
She's mentioned when Nectus is talking to Poppy. If you don't remember her, I suggest you go and read that encounter again.
But she's a baby. She's just a baby.
She's Nectus's baby.
So yeah, so we're introduced to Jadis, and then Nyktos is like, we need to talk, and I prefer to do that away from any potentially breakable items you may or may not want to throw at me. And it's just another parallel to Poppy wanting to stab Cass. It's Sarah wanting to throw things at Nyktos. It's fine. It's fine. We're fine. And then chapter 27, they discuss how they're both interested in each other, but he is setting some ground rules that she needs to essentially listen to.
We know how our women take to rules being imposed on them. They take it real well. Very obedient.
Something like that. So he gives her a list of rules. Essentially, you can wander, but not really. You have to stay in your room when we have unexpected guests. This whole myriad of things, and she's just like, I don't want to pay attention to this shit. And then he's talking about love and his parents' love. And he said, love caused their deaths long before either had taken their final breaths, before my father even met my mother. Love is a beautiful weapon, often wielded as a means to control another. It shouldn't be a weakness, but that is what it becomes, and those most innocent always pay for it. I've never seen anything good come from love. My father loved my mother more than anything in these realms, more than he should have, and still he could not keep her safe. That is why I have these conditions, these rules as you like to call them. It's not about me attempting to exert authority over you or control you. It's about trying to do what my father failed at. It's about making sure you do not meet the same fate as my mother. And I think that that's such a powerful thing because he understands to some level and degree, he understands the lack of control she really had over her life. And he's not trying to control her, but he's trying to keep her safe. And despite her, being stubborn, like, I respect it.
There's honestly, like, you gotta love him. There's very obvious signs of trauma in that too. I saw what happened to my mother. I'm not gonna let that happen to you, even if you're just like consort and name kind of thing. It's like I ain't gonna let the past repeat itself. So people may say, oh, he's going about the wrong way. But then when you see all this, you're like, but I get it. I get
exactly
where he's coming from.
We get his overprotectiveness. We love a daddy Nyktos. Anyway, we go into chapter 28, and Sarah and the boys are watching the throne room activities. What?
I saw what you put on chapter 30, and I didn't see that before.
So yeah, so Sarah's with Rain, and Rain goes, and like the guys are just like, this is a terrible idea, like we shouldn't have done this. And Rain laughs and goes, are you worried Daddy Nyktos will be upset with you for allowing her in here and send you to bed without your supper? And Sarah lifts her brows. She goes, Daddy Nyktos? And I'm like, I mean, if the shoe fits.
And that's where
And
it is
then
born.
and that is where it's born. She's showing her sticker that says Daddy Nyctos on it. And then one of the rules gets enacted because they have an unexpected visitor. And it is the goddess Vesis. Yeah, Vesis, whatever.
Sorry, she's a bitch.
Anyway, and then Sarah wants to be super nosy, so she is kind of snooping around, and then she finds herself in the redwoods. Honey. Why do our women have penchant for
remember how we
danger?
said they love rules and they're so good at obeying them.
Something like that. So then Ash is occupied, but then comes to her rescue and he's pissed and she bled onto the ground and he's all like, bruh, like there are gods and shit in the tombs. Like we need to check that because you might have awoken some things.
Not might have. They literally were coming out of the ground at her.
Might have. That's fine.
No,
don't blame
there's
her.
the hawk that she brings back to life, the germs, then these things popping out of the ground. Like, homie's like,
justice for Sarah.
Sarah
Anyway,
kind of stupid. We love her.
And then Scion is expected to escort her back, but she got big ripper dippered, as I like to say, and one of the whatchamajinkers scratched her, which they have a toxin. That
snakes inside them.
Yeah. So, toxin and poison. Big rip.
Yes.
Anyway.
So
the
she passes out.
Yeah, she passes out. And luckily, Nyctos had an antidote. Luckily, because rip her, if not. The
Nectus
germ.
is there. We love that.
Yeah, that's why I put Nectus. I love you. Anytime I see Nectus, I just want to say I love you. It's a toxin that germs carry inside in their insides. It spreads through their mouths and their nails. The black streaks on your arms were the first sign. By the time Scion brought you in, those marks covered your entire body. You're lucky you're alive. Nectus thinks Nyctos should have let her die.
He straight up says he'd be free of you.
Correct.
Like, but we love Nectus because he's like been with
he's very
Nyctos
blunt,
since he was
but like
born. Loyal. Like he's very protective of him. Like
and he straight up says, I don't think his decision had anything to do with the deal. I don't think any of his recent decisions have. Honestly, tracks. Like there's a storm a brewing. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And then Sarah's told that the Shadowlands is dying. Oh, and then and Nyctos is just like why did you run? Like what the heck is
literally
your deal?
The one place I told you not to go.
And he's like, wait, were you jealous? And she was like, you know what? Okay, yes, I was jealous. You have been too busy to even speak to me for longer than 5 seconds over the last couple days, leaving me alone like always, to walk the courtyard by myself, eat dinner by myself, go to bed by myself, wake up by myself. I'm really starting to wonder what I did in this life to deserve always being alone. Preach, sister girl. And she said, so yes, I'm stuck here yet again, alone with my husband-to-be, while my husband-to-be is busy doing whatever with a primal who acted awfully familiar with you. So sure, I was jealous. Does that make you happy? Amused? Either way, all of that is so beside the point. It's not even funny. And I put, we love an assertive queen because we do. And then there's some stuff that happens. Wink, wink, cough, cough. And
I gotta say, I love that, like, when they're talking about, like, he's trying to be like, why are you thinking you deserve to be alone? And then I just love that he calls Vesis as poisonous as a pit viper.
It's really funny because it gives me a parallel to a different book series. And I thought of it right away. It also reminded me of Viper from Valorant, but that's besides the point.
Oh, yeah, obviously, yes.
But like not in a baddie way, like in a way, you know?
Yeah.
Yes,
sexy time.
Sexy time. And then he essentially can't stop himself, and he says, even though I know I'll probably end up hating myself for it, even though you'll probably end up hating me. So there's like an allusion to like, this is not going to work out. There's no, like, this can't end well.
Yeah.
And we go into chapter 31.
Chapter 31. She is
Where
outside with Eos and Jadis and Reaver Butt, who's learning to fly. We love our little
they grow
Reaver.
up so fast.
I know. And it's so funny because she's asking Eos about Vessus, like what she thinks about it. And I love what Eos says because she's like, have you ever met someone who feels they are entitled to whatever they want? Tavius. That is Vessus, and that entitlement extends to people, but she will fixate on what she perceives she cannot have. If she is unsuccessful in achieving that, she can be very resentful. So basically, she wants Ash because he's never shown interest into her, and now he's showing interest in Sarah, and that makes her like big jealous. So she's a cunt ass bitch. We don't like her.
We don't like her, and like it gets worse throughout the series. Like it's not even a one-off. She just is a
it's
bitch.
not like you find out later, like, oh, maybe we should feel bad for her. No, we
Don't
hate
feel
her no
bad
matter
for her.
what. Don't feel bad for her. We find out that Eos is actually distantly like related to Ash's mother. So that was a cute little like they're family, and that's why she feels safe here, and I love that. But she's talking about the primals and why they can be the way they are. And she talks about like we've heard them mention going to sleep and like taking a long nap. Which Vessus needs to because apparently she hasn't. But she says the amount of time talk about how long they can live for. She says it can rot the mind to watch the world fall and be rebuilt around you time after time, to see nothing new, to no longer be surprised, and to become so accustomed to loss that even the idea of love is no longer a thrill. The longer a primal or a god lives, the greater the risk of them becoming more ether than person. For those who do not wish to sleep, they can enter what we call Arcadia, a place very much like the Vale, a garden, so to speak. It allows for an ascension of another and peace for the primal. So I kind of like that. I like how they have like you can take a nap or you can retire and live out your days.
I think that this is a great illustration of how ether is as like a, I don't want to say substance, as like an entity. I think it's very much like, you know how there's a light and a dark side. This is the only way I can analyze, or the only analogy I can think of. But like the light and the dark side, and Anakin's all like getting too persuaded by the dark side.
Yeah.
I think that this is a perfect like parallel to that. It's like you essentially feed into your dark side more, and then the ether takes you over, and then you're all like, I am your father, you know? But like not clearly.
Against me.
Spoiler if you haven't seen Star Wars, but also my nerd is showing.
No spoilers because it's been out for how many years?
Anyway.
No spoilers for you. Anyways,
Belle. Do you say Belle or Belle?
I say Belle. I just say Belle.
Okay, we're gonna say Belle and Rahar. And yes, we've heard those names before. Boop. But I love Belle, and I think this book, when she saves Belle, like, my heart. Anyway, I have to be.
I love it, and I love this is another part of seeing like history unfold because, like, just like Rain, Belle is another one that in the other series she's the goddess of like the hunt and stuff, and right now she's not. So, Primal Hannon, I think is his name.
Primal Hannon, but you see how she is setting herself up to be one, and how like her background and how like you can tell where this is going, but you're seeing it unfold, and I think that's what I loved. And like a lot of people, not everyone knows about the reading order and not everyone really like understands it, but there's a reason that there are Flesh and Fire books sprinkled throughout the From Blood and Ash, because it gives you the context. It gives you context that like feels beneficial to know, um, you know, during this whole journey that we're going on.
And a lot of books that have like higher beings and stuff like that, you just hear about them, but you don't know them like on any type of personal level. So you don't have a connection to them. And you're like, oh, I know what they're supposed to do, like who they're supposed to be. But I love this prequel because you get to have that connection with them. And so when you go back to the other series and you hear about them more, it's more sentimental of, I know that person and you don't know that. It like makes you feel like an insider as the reader.
Exactly.
And it's so, oh, it's such a good feeling.
And then we're talking about the coronation. They're having a little girls moment. And Belle just tells Sarah, like, just don't show fear at the coronation. It's kind of saucy and kind of spicy, but like,
should you be
just
concerned?
stand your ground.
Just don't show fear. And it's like, cool. That's cool.
Yeah, and then she has an interaction with another mortal, who's the seamstress that Nyktos essentially hires to make her clothing and the coronation dress and everything. And Sarah asks, like, how do you feel about him taking a mortal as a consort? And she says, the seamstress says, for his highness to take a mortal feels like an acknowledgement to many of us. Like, even though he is a primal, he sees us as his equals. And there, well, there are not many like him. Many cannot wait to officially meet you. And I think that that's such an opposite reaction to how people responded to Poppy becoming
Oh yeah.
a different, it's a different vibe, I understand, but like, is it though? You know what I mean? Like, she was bred to essentially kill him, which we don't know that yet here, but the fact that the people are so like gung-ho for this, like,
yeah,
says a lot.
And I love it because like in a place full of gods, they're the minority. They're not treated, they're like the bottom of the food chain. They're not treated well. So to see like one of the strongest take one of them, like I would be like, oh my gosh, this like is a changing point for how we're treated maybe here. Like I can understand like how they're excited about that.
And this next part, so then she asks about like the seamstress being chosen and like how, like, what the background is or whatever. And I think that the definitions not necessarily are different between this and the other book, but this is where it's just like, they say at one time the chosen were ascended. They did serve the gods, but that is not what it is now, and it hasn't been for a long time. From the moment a chosen arrives in Elysium, they are treated as objects to be used and given away, toyed with, and eventually broken. It's not necessarily, it's like you get it. You get a good background from the other books, but this gives you like context of like how, in my opinion, how it kind of originated into this shithole of shit.
Of the right and everything. Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
Like in the begin, it shows that in the beginning what the right actually was, because a lot of people thought the ascended started the right to get the people, but this shows that no, there was a right. Like when Ethos, do you call him Ethos, the dad?
Yes.
Okay, I
Don't
want to
doubt
make
it.
sure. Okay,
go with it.
Ethos, when he was the primal of life, there was a reason for it. They did get to serve the gods, like, but it shows that like things got screwed up. They just never corrected it because Colas had face to put on. Like he wasn't gonna let anyone know that he couldn't do the things that he was supposed to be able to do. And it's just showing that this is where like that twist starts, that sets up the scene. Because Poppy and not Poppy, Sarah and Nyktos are living this out, so their children would have known about it. And so because their children knew about it, Malik told Isbeth about it, and that's where like all those ideas came from in my head. Like,
yeah, that's like, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. There's
Sets
also
that
this
stage.
line, it is far easier to be lied to than it is to acknowledge that you've been lied to. And I think that that's a theme that goes into the From Blood and Ash books for sure.
Yeah.
It's very much like a, hey, this shit don't add up, but also we're just gonna let the shit not add up because it's just easier this way.
It's a big theme for life too, because how many people do you look at and you can see something's not right, but those people are oblivious to it? And you wonder, like, are they oblivious to it, or do they choose to be, because it's hard to acknowledge those things that are happening. Like, such a theme of life, man.
Honestly. And then so they're still talking about the chosen and those who
And then that
can't be moved or saved.
yeah,
Yeah.
Niktos tries to save them.
Those like that he doesn't know, like they can't move or they don't, like, no signs of, like they just poof, they're gone. They disappear.
A lot of chosen have been disappearing, yeah.
There's no, they are simply gone, as the book says.
Yep.
So,
which is, not ominous.
And always is ominous, but that's okay. Anyway, so then we go into chapter 32. Samantha.
I was waiting for you to like say something.
Yeah, horrible things are happening and they're still being sexy. Anyway, then we learn that Belle is like I was alluding to earlier, she is kind of the huntress. She is the insider for Nyktos, the insider spy, as I'd like to say.
He gets the info.
I really enjoy this quote. So she asks Nyktos, like, how did things go? The pillars were their souls you had to judge yourself. And Nyktos goes, there were, and things went both good and bad. And he says, it's never easy making that choice. Life is important, Liesa, but what comes after is an eternity. I know many believe that things are black and white, that if you do this or that, you will be rewarded with paradise or punished. It's never simple. There are people who do terrible things, but that doesn't always mean they're terrible people. And I think
I like it because I feel like so many people like to think things are black and white. There's just a right or there's a wrong. And there's not. There's so much gray, and like there's so many things that you can't tell based on looking at a situation. And I think this was a very well way of putting that.
I agree. And so they're kind of bonding over their struggles. We're going to say struggles. And tendencies to murder people. And we learn that Tavius is in the pits of endless flame until Nyktos wants to make him suffer a different way.
Rightfully so.
And then Sarah talks about how she feels like she's a monster, or worries that she's a monster. And Nyktos says, I know one thing, Liesa, a monster wouldn't care if they were one. And that, I think, to me, is a really big moment in their relationship, because it's like they acknowledge their quote unquote flaws, or their, I don't want to say quirks, because killing people is not a quirk. It's kind of a problem. Right. But like they acknowledge it, but they are still like seeing eye to eye on things. Like they still understand each other and are interested in each other.
Yeah.
And then stuff happens.
Stuff? What stuff happens, Steph?
That is for Patreon only. Anyway, she didn't feel like a monster after that. That's all I gotta say about that. Yeah, well, that's fine. And so she learns the background of the blood drops on his back. He says that they represent someone whose life was lost by my hands, actions, or because of a decision I made or didn't. There have to be hundreds of them, maybe even thousands. They are a reminder that all life can easily be extinguished. Oh, that was deep, honestly. Super deep. So then we go into chapter 33. She is experiencing things that she hasn't experienced before. Being held and kissed like she's never been before, making her feeling wanted and needed. And she notices that Jadis is sleeping at the foot of the bed, and she like not freaks out, but she's just like, what the heck? And Nectus is like, I've also been here for quite some time. I was looking for my daughter, figured she'd be wherever he was, but I didn't expect to find you with him.
I love the image that he's just perching on the railing of the balcony in his immortal form. Like, I just love that image too.
I love Nectus.
Both of them are just staring at them.
And so then we have this moment of Nectus says that he knew Ash's parents and called them friends. And he calls Ash one of his own. And then we have this moment where Nectus says, I think I will call you one of my own. And she goes, why? And he says, because you've given him peace.
I love that so much.
And
bring on the guilt, man.
Yeah, then she says, I didn't want him to be sweet. I didn't want Nectus to claim me as his. I didn't want to give Ash peace. And Ash, she pretends to go back to sleep, and Ash is like, if you continue pretending to be asleep, Jadis will start nibbling on your toes. Okay, so fun fact, when I was growing up, I always had this recurring nightmare that there would be crabs at the foot of my bed eating my toes.
Oh no.
So fun fact about me
growing up about ants. I don't know why, but ants biting me. Like,
gross. Okay, and then so Sarah refuses to be hidden away and not wanting to live her life that way. And she doesn't really care if she dies. And he, of course, says, do you not value your life whatsoever? And shocker, no one's surprised. And so then we're learning more background of the other characters in this book. So Jadis is a puppy / toddler that can belch fire. Hector used to be an 80s at 80s. We're gonna say 80s.
We're learning that a lot of the people who serve Nyktos came from other courts, basically. Yes. Yeah, a lot of them felt, for some reason or another, just couldn't be there anymore, or were outcasted, or were hiding, and they all found solitude with
some you learn the background, some you don't. And Nectus makes this comment that is foreshadowing if I've ever frickin' seen it in this book. But he says, to be honest, Ethos was very clever. He always was planning ahead. He had a reason. And then they find Gemma, who was a chosen who Nyktos was saving. And
Sarah being Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah being Sarah resurrects her.
She says, I can't stand by and do nothing.
Correct. And Reaver and Jadis reacts to the power, all the gods react to the power, and Ash comes to the realization that she carries an ember of life in her.
Dun dun dun.
And then we go into chapter 34, where Ash comes to the realization where he realizes that his dad put the ember in her. And that it's a secret with the people in this room. And he says Gemma wasn't as wounded as previously believed. Yeah, sure, okay.
Yeah, that's what they're gonna tell people.
And he said, cross me and you'll spend an eternity ensuring you regret that choice. Shocker.
Oof. Someone's about to cross him though, and it's not who he thinks.
Correct. So then they're all like, it's not that big of a deal, like no biggie. And he's like, that was one hell of a ripple of power, Lee. So one that will most likely be felt all of Elysium by many gods and primals. There's no doubt in my mind that others will come searching for the source. And she's like scared.
Right. Yeah. She's like, what's going on?
And he's like, where's all your bravery? And it's just like,
we also find out that like he's felt that power
before.
Over the years. Like every time she's used her power, he's felt it. He just didn't know where it's coming from. But I do like how he's like, where's that foolish bravery of yours? And she's honest. She's like, you're the primal of death. I didn't think you'd appreciate like me stealing your souls. And I love how she's like, so back off. And he's just like, I wouldn't have known it's you. Like,
and then we learn that his uncle stole the primal of life title from like everything about that whole thing. Switch places with him.
Polis and Ethos are twins.
And
Polis was the primal of death.
Ethos was the primal of life, and then they wombo combo switchoed, but not really switch. It was kind of like
consensually.
Yes, exactly.
Actually, they don't know what happened to make them switch lives. Like switch. That's the one thing they don't know. None of them know like how that took place.
We're still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, it happened. And Colas went to a lot of extent of like erasing people's memories, so no one knew that that's how it was. Everyone thought he's originally the primal of life, not death. And there are very few gods and primals that do know the truth.
So then we go into chapter 35, which is a big chapter, according to Samantha and her labels.
Big chapter.
All right. So then we get a lot of background about Colas and Ethos, that they were twins, identical, one fated to represent life and the other death. They ruled together for eons as they were meant to. He was a fair king, kind and generous and curious by nature. It was him who gave the dragons a mortal form. We learned that Ethos was the primal of life, or as the primal of life was cherished, whereas Colas, the primal of death, was feared and avoided. Shocker. I mean, honestly, that tracks. And then Colas saw and fell in love with Satoria on first sight, but he scared her so much that she ran and fell off the cliffs of sorrow.
Yes, we find out that he is the one that scared her and killed her.
My thing is love it for... Oh, because they knew what he looked like. So Satoria knew who he was when she saw him, and that frightened her.
Because I don't think it was until after that they stopped depicting the primal of life and death.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But like in my head, I'm just like, that's a little aggressive and intense. Like I get it, but in a cute little meet cute, like seeing someone and loving them at first sight, I just think this was a little aggressive. And I can see, rereading it now, I can very much see the trajectory of like how he, like, Colas like got to this point. Like,
right.
Anyway.
Because I always imagine like poof, he popped up in front of her, that scared her, she turned it right. But no, it was like she just knew he was death. And so I guess for like for our parallel, it'd be like a Grim Reaper kind of situation. Like you know them, you know what they're gonna do. I think she might have overreacted a little bit, but
just a little. So anyway, Colas was distraught because it was love at first sight, and Ethos refused to resurrect her. So Colas did everything in his power to essentially take the power from Ethos to resurrect her. And then, spoiler alert, he got the power, and she essentially resented him for resurrecting her.
Yeah, they said although she died far too young and unexpectedly, she had accepted her death and passed through the pillars into the veil. So she died young, but she accepted it. But then he brought her back, and that put her soul at unrest. Like,
yeah, and Sarah's like realizing that like she has this power, and she doesn't like want that. Like she doesn't want that kind of power. Like that is just too much for her. And Nectis is telling her like that kind of power is a blessing and it is a curse. Acknowledging that is not a weakness. It has to be a strength, because most would not realize how quickly that power can turn on them. And like I respect that. Like it's Nectis is one of those who's very blunt and like straightforward, but I can appreciate his insights, because he does have a lot of like insightful moments despite his like very blunt nature.
Yeah, and then we find out that she died again. So Satoria came back to life. She ended up dying again. No one like quite knows what happened in that time frame. But what we do know is that Ethos worked with it wasn't one of the fates. I'm trying to remember who it was. He worked with someone to try to keep her out of Colas's hands. So essentially what they did was yeah, one of the other gods. What they did basically was make it so that way she was reborn. Like reincarnated. So reincarnated. And when that person dies, reincarnated again. Like she's never gonna be at rest. But for them, that was the best thing they could do to keep her hidden from Colas, because he would never know who she's in. And that's just I feel bad for Satoria. Like she overreacted, yes, but did she deserve that? Like
Yeah, and so that also leads them to realize that like the rot is because of there being no primal of life because of the balance being forked up.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And by her coming there with those embers, things are changing. Like the poppies are coming back. Hey guys, look, poppies are coming back. Um, but
just
he's like,
saying.
what do you call the rot? It's happened in the Shadowlands. It's a consequence of there being no primal of life. And she like this was like a blow to her hearing this. And she's like, I don't understand. Like, that doesn't make sense. And he says, the deal did have an expiration date because of what my father did to the climate wasn't natural. It couldn't continue that way forever. But all that meant was that the climate would return to its original state, more seasonal conditions, like in some areas of the mortal realm. Of course, I doubt it will ever get as cold as Ireland, but not where Lysania is located, but nothing too severe. And she's like, wait, it has nothing to do with the rot. And they're like, why did you think the two were related? Like, you thought it was your fault. And she's like having a panic attack. She's full on panicking.
Keela, the primal Keela, by the way.
Hila, thank you. I knew it started with
All
a
these
K.
Ks, all these Ks, dude.
Case. But she's like, I thought I could stop it. That's why I spent my entire life on. I thought I could stop it. Everything I did, the loneliness, the fucking veil of the chosen, the training, the becoming nothing. She's going off. She's like, I was supposed to do this. I was supposed to stop this. She's feeling like guilt and relief and confusion. And then they kind of realize what she was planning. Belle is the one who said, I don't think she thought becoming your consort would save her people. I think she learned how to end a deal in favor of the summoner. And that's when it all comes to light. And he says, you had to know you would not walk away from this. Even if you had succeeded, you'd be dead the moment you pulled that fucking Shadowstone blade from my chest. And does your life hold no meaning to you at all?
Shocker.
The theme. And then they're under siege.
Yep.
Because there's never a break in these big dramatic moments.
Nope. And so they become under siege, and he's like, I don't know what to do with you, kind of thing. And she's like, let me help. And
no one else knows what to do with her either. Like,
correct.
Most of them are treating her kind of shitty, but at the same time, they're kind of like, this is awkward.
Yeah, and he's all like, you need to like stay here because like that, like if he did come for you, you would get what you so desperately seek for yourself, your death. And she's all like, well, I can help, do whatever you want, lock me away or take me with you. Either way, you're wasting time. And so ships are being capsized and the water is black, and it's just creepy mists and teleportations and
Dragon
fights and all this
fights.
shit. Yeah, all this shit's going on. And Rain's just like, whatever you do, don't you get yourself killed. I'm sure Nyktos wants the honor for himself. And Ector goes, he's not going to kill her, not when she carries the Ember. So then she's helping them. And
people are stampeding.
And
but the Kai come out.
Doesn't Belle get forked over? Is this where Belle gets forked over? Oh, okay. Just kidding.
It's after all this.
Oh yeah. So they are fighting to get on the siege, whatever, sure. She saves Ector from imminent doom. Nyktos being Nyktos, shocker.
Rain appreciating Theon.
Yep. And so
she ended up saving
like
Nyktos, yeah.
This is such like a hard thing, like Nyktos keeps reading her emotions, and she's literally just like, stop telling me how to feel. Like she's annoyed.
Well, rightfully so.
She's like, don't you dare insinuate that what I've done with you was purely an act or what I'm feeling is fake when I've spent my entire goddamn life not being allowed to want or even feel anything for myself. Not when I spent the last 3 years hating myself for the relief I felt when you didn't take me because it meant I didn't have to do what was expected of me. I know what I am. I've always known I am one of the worst sort, a monster, but don't you ever tell me how I feel. And that's like another recurring theme, like after the truth comes out, that happens. Um and essentially, Nyktos is like, put her somewhere safe. She doesn't value her life. Shocker. Like, that's another thing. Um, and more about her feelings uh
And then Nectus, Nyctos was injured a lot during this, and we find
correct.
out that he hasn't fed like for centuries because of some of his trauma that he's experienced. And
Correct.
if honestly, you can relate the trauma a lot to like what Castile went through when he was held
Exactly.
captive. A lot of that same stuff, and so he doesn't want to do that. So he's always been careful, but now he's to the point where he's like going to tip into that spot where they say is like not good, and you can get really dangerous. And so Nectus is like, I think you should go make him feed. He's mad enough at you that he'll probably do it. And she's like, I'm not sure how I feel about the ease in which you suggested that. But she agrees to it. But then he goes, is it your choice though? Like you can say no, we won't make you do it. We won't hold it against you. And I love Nectus for being real about that. And everyone's like, and Rain's like, are you sure she came here to kill him? And Nectus is like, he's the one who brought her here. Like, yeah, I'm sure. And he's like, what if he kills her? And he's like, well, then Hector says, well, then I guess we don't have to worry about her trying to kill him. And she's getting mad at this point. Like everyone's like treating her like shit, and she gets it, but that would be so frustrating. Of
Oh,
like, I get
100%.
it, you're mad. I didn't want to do this, but you're not gonna understand that. Whatever. But she's gonna do it. And I love that Scion gave her a thumbs up and says thoughts and many prayers. I'm like, wow, you're a he's like he reminds me of Emil. Scion does.
I love, there's so many parallels and I love it. So she volunteers as tribute and Nyktos is like, I may kill you. Do you understand that? I haven't fed in decades. I don't trust myself right now. And she's all like, take me, daddy. I mean, she doesn't say it like that, but she's all like, she's all like, yes. So then we go into chapter 38.
Which the notes are for that are very short because that's a lot of
feeding, 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 feeding. And then after
caffeine
the
feeding.
feeding, yeah. So then after that, he's like, I want you to rest. If you're beside me, I don't have to worry what you may or may not do. Um, and yeah. And then he doesn't feel icy and cold anymore after taking her blood. And he's warm. And that's so disrespectful. He says, it's funny because you cannot hurt me. You can never weaken me to the point that you'd ever be a real threat. Which is an interesting thing to say.
Right? It's like,
Um,
ooh, why do you think that?
and then things that I cannot say, and then chapter 39. By the way, we're getting to the end of the book. The chapter 39, there's only 45 chapters.
Yeah.
Um,
This one's just it's if you notice, you can notice whose show notes are Steph's and whose are Sam's, because Steph tries to keep it like summarized. And I'm like, I can't decide. I'm putting all these quotes in because I love them. And then
that's
I also
fine.
have a love of indenting. If you notice, like where the indents all start, that's me. I'm the indent queen. Like
Anyway, um, so Sarah's having this internal conflict with herself because she wasn't sure if the primal was capable of something like love or if she was. But she wanted his friendship, his respect. She wanted him to be
bad.
Ash and she wanted to be Sarah. Um, like, and then she's just admitting defeat. Like she can't save her people. Like she doesn't know what to do. She was like, do I turn myself over to Collis? He would kill me. It would only buy the Shadowlands extra time. Like she's just trying to figure out what the fuck she's trying, like what to do.
Mhm.
Um,
I
and
love
Mhm.
when they kind of went. She wake up and he's gone, and so she's going through all this. she's back in her room, and Paxton comes in. He's one of the mortals who helps out there. And she's just like, oh, Ios told me that you were a princess. And she's like, only for 1% of my life. Like, that's not important. And he asks, were you born a princess? And she says, yes. And he says, then you're a princess for 100% of your life. And I was just like, I love these side characters that they don't get much like page time, but the time that they're there, it's
Like
just like they
Elijah.
hit.
Perfect
Yeah.
example is
Yeah.
Elijah.
It's just like,
Um,
oh, I love it.
and he says this too, right? The what you did last night on the rise, out on the
Yeah.
rise.
That's also
Everyone's been
Paxton.
talking about how the mortal consort was up there shooting arrows and killing those beasts. We will be proud to call you our consort. And I think that that is great. Until she tries to take a bath and gets murdered. So,
Don't
or
you
tries to
hate
get
when you're
murdered.
taking a relaxing bath and someone tries to strangle and drown you? Like, I hate when
Let
that
me say,
happens.
let me tell you, I took a bath last night and there were no stranglings that
Well,
happened.
you
I almost drowned myself because I'm too short for the bath, but that's besides the
I
point.
can see that too because I know what bath you were in. Oh, that's so funny. I
Rude.
was gonna ask, were you reading this part while in the bath? Because I feel like I'd have to get out of the bath after reading that part.
Yeah, no, I was about here when I was taking the bath. Anyway,
Uh,
so yeah, moving into chapter 40, um,
gets
some
attacked.
gets attacked and Nyctos comes to save her. Dun 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 dun.
Yeah. She kind of had a handle on him, but she was also kind of panicking because it made her think of Tavius.
And
Nyctos
then
gets there, Scion gets there, and Ector, I
so
believe.
yeah, Ector kills the guy before they're able to question him. But I think it's funny that like clearly she just betrayed them and he still did not hesitate and he killed the guy who tried to harm her. And I thought that that was very like
They all
interesting
stepped
considering the
in to
situation.
still help.
And like even if it was because Nyctos like it just felt like not because of Nyctos's will. I felt it was more like a some sort of loyalty to her even though like this whole shit's still unfolding.
Mm-hmm.
Um And Nyctos is like, you're cleaning up this mess. Because he's the one who killed him. Um, and so she's like scarred and like traumatized right now. And really, you really put Nyctos's mood and skin temp as a Katy Perry song. Really, Samantha? Anyway,
I
Nyctos is
forgot
hot and
about that.
cold.
Oh, I love this. Okay.
And then
Yeah.
they talk about her headaches, jaw aches, and bloody teeth brushing, and that she smells like death,
We love it
and
when our women smell like death, man.
something like that. And
But this, okay, but this time it's not the poppy smelling like death because she's ancient. She just smells like death because she
because she's
did some
yeah,
stuff. But
so they're discussing how they think that she's going through the culling,
yep.
and that they're confused how Sir Holland knew about the tea to help with her symptoms because he's mortal.
Yes.
And she's like, does that mean I'm going to go through ascension? And they're just like, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
They're
You'll
like,
be fine.
no, it's fine.
NBD.
Like the ether isn't that powerful. Like, jokes on them. They think it's like this small thing. Like it's just an ember. It's fine. It's whatever. Um, and
Um,
then
they're talking about their relationship and he's just like, this has never been about what either of us wants. It's only about what must be done. And if we don't proceed, that alone will arouse too much suspicion. And she's just like, friendship, if I consider such a thing. Oh, she was suggesting friendship and he goes, friendship, even if I considered such a thing, I would never think of you. There's no way I could ever trust you. That I would not doubt or question every thought or action, not when you were shaped and groomed to be whatever it is you believed I wanted, not when you are just a vessel that would be empty if not for the ember of life you carry within you. And that was a little harsh, Daddy Nyctos. Just
I
a
know
little bit
it's
harsh.
like it's one of those things of like you can tell he's hurting because usually he would never say something like that to her. But oh, the punch in her gut. This girl who's been alone. The only companion she'd had is her stepsister, who we have deemed her Tawny.
Yes, we did. Oh, offline we
We
did that.
yeah. Like just the like I just want this one thing And he's just like, nah, that ain't happening. I could never trust you. Which I don't blame him, but it hurts.
Yeah, it was
It
really
hurts.
painful to kind of like read through this. So then the next chapter, essentially, she's just kind of biding her time. She's eating meals, but like there's no trust, so like there's no real interactions with her.
Still a butter knife.
Yeah, she stole a butter knife as a source of protection because she doesn't have her dagger anymore. And then Eos and Belle come up to her. And Eos needs her help with something. And so Eos is like so carefree. She's just like, why wouldn't I trust you? Like,
she
should I be
says,
worrying
like,
about anything?
yeah, she's like, look, it's clear to me that you didn't want to do this. Are you gonna try something now? No. Do you have a weapon? Technically, no, because that's a freaking butter knife. And so she's like, okay, then you're fine. Like, and I love that about Eos.
Yeah, so it turns out that the person who attacked Sarah, I almost said Poppy. Gemma had told her husband. It was her husband, wasn't it? Someone. I can't remember the guy's name. But she knows that Sarah is what Collis is looking for, and Gemma kind of explained how, like, what she went through. I was his favorite for a bit. He kept me close to him for a while. He said he liked my hair. He's kind of gross, and he obsessed over it and said he would do anything to find it. This presence, his Gracia, gray.
I don't know why I call it like Gracia. I know there's no I, but in my mind, that's the only way it can make sense of the word.
Yeah, and it means life, but it also means love, like Liesa. So then we're going on Collis's obsession with the love of his life.
This is a possessive piece of shit.
Correct.
We find out like she tells us about the chosen that had been disappearing. And she's like, they weren't right when they came back. They were
Revenants.
Different, cold, lifeless. Some of them stayed indoors only, moving about during the brief hours of night. Their eyes changed. They became the color of shadowstone. They always looked hungry. He called them his reborn, his revenants. He said they were his work in progress. I heard him saying once that all he needed was his Gracia to perfect them.
Gross. Yeah, sound familiar, anyone? Also, so the Fates are the only people who might know like why she has the embers of life in her. So then she's told to behave, and like
so,
everyone's
we gotta tell Nyktos, who's not here. He's in the town.
And then the goddess Krissa,
who we saw in the mortal realm.
Yeah,
and this is where you thought Belle.
Yeah.
Belle does meet her.
Yeah. So Eos, she interacts with them, and she doesn't leave Eos and Belle alone. And there's this whole.
She said something to Eos that we don't find anything out about Eos in this book, like her background. This is like the only hint we get. And she says, Eos, is that you? You look well. I'm sure Collis will be thrilled to hear.
Yeah, so then there's this whole thing, and Sarah in the book goes, for a moment I wasn't sure what had happened, but I saw Belle look down. I followed her gaze to the tip of a dagger protruding from the center of her chest. Disbelief seized me as Belle's grip loosened on the sword, and it fell to the floor with a thud that sounded like a crack of thunder. That dagger, oh gods, it was Shadowstone. It was deadly to a god if it pierced their heart or their head, and that blade had to be close. It had to be right there, and there was no way Cressa had thrown it.
Yep.
And then she has the audacity to say, you must be her, the mortal would-be consort to the primal of death. The entire realm has been wondering why he would choose a mortal, and I think we have our answer, don't we, Mattis?
I say
whatever.
Mattis, but whatever. So Mattis comes in, more nothingness as she gets conked out.
Yeah, I hate it here.
I love how she's like she wakes up and they're in the throne room now, so they're in a different spot, and she sees Belle like with the dagger, and all she can think is like, I need to get out of her. She's gonna be paralyzed. She can't heal with that in her. And Cressa's like, don't even think about it, mortal. And she's like, I have a name. Do I look like I give a fuck? Do I look like I give a fuck that you don't? Like, I just love that little back and forth.
Yeah, and then there's a whole biting situation. And Nikto, mm, well,
Yeah.
Niktos didn't like
Tarek
it very
comes in
much.
and bites her and basically reads all her memories, and she screams, and Niktos comes in and he's not happy.
No, no,
He says,
no.
on your knees now. And well,
That's not in a good way, Samantha. That isn't a good
I
way.
know, but I would have been just like, okay. But yeah, no, he literally looks at Cressa, she's dead. Nick, the Nective comes in and just fireballs him basically.
Good.
Um,
Bye. Good riddance.
and then we're left with the treacherous one who did the biggest deed to her because he bit her, and he's like, don't look at her. If you do, you will not like what happens. And he's stupid. He looks at her and he's like, what did I say about looking at her? And then he says, like, um, where is it?
Kill me, take my soul. It will be nothing compared to what he does to you because you can't stop him. Neither could your father. He'll have her. And then Tarek howled as his entire body spasmed. And Nyktos' hand was inside the god. His hand, he dragged his hand up Tarek's stomach, carving straight through his flesh. I can smell her blood on your lips. There's nothing that I will not do to you because of that.
Yep.
And
then
then Nyktos goes to Sarah and says, I won't hurt you ever. And she's like, I know.
but
And
she
then he
admits that
says,
she was terrified.
yep. And he says, don't forget, Sarah, you are not afraid. You may feel fear, but you are never afraid. And I think that is so powerful because it's like
Yeah.
you can be like the differentiation between the two terms. And he gave her back her dagger. We love that moment with the
I love
bonding of
that
the
so much.
dagger. And then they realize that Belle is in really bad shape, and everyone's like, you can't, like, that you need way too much
She's a
power to
god. You
resurrect
can't
her.
do that. Even
And she
Eos is like, let
tries.
her try at least.
Yeah, so she tries.
Um,
And well, the glow flared and then expanded, rolling out from Belle in a wave, an intense, powerful aura that became a shockwave. Wind roared around us, tugging at my clothing and hair. The floor shook, everything rattled as a bolt of light streaked across the sky above the open ceiling. Lightning. I'd never seen lightning here. And so she successfully resurrects Belle, and Nyktos is like, what you did is impossible. An ember of life have been able shouldn't have been enough for what you did. You didn't just bring her back, you ascended her.
yep.
Dun dun dun.
And then they have a scene change in chapter 44. They're in Nyctos's office.
For the first time.
Yeah, it's Sarah and Seon and Ector, and she straight up asked them, she's like, are you scared of me? And they're kind of like, we're not scared, it's just we're kind of unsettled because you shouldn't be able to do the things that
That
you
you're
were
doing.
doing. And they said that it kind of reminded them of like when a primal is ascended, like the feeling of what they felt and everything. But they're like, she's not a primal though, she's just more than a god, they don't know what's going. And she's like, well, is that a bad thing? And Nyktos is like, well, for primal Hannon it is, because now she could challenge him for his spot over that court.
Yeah, which goes back to the parallel in From Blood and Ash, where she is the goddess of the hunt.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So then they're like, we need answers to these questions. Odetta can't, like, she's too freshly dead. So Nyktos says he summoned the fates that array. That's how I'm gonna pronounce that. So they all know that Collis like could feel the power, like everyone felt it. So it is what it is. And they said they'd find out if it was me these victors were protecting. And Nyktos goes, victors. Been a long time since I've heard of them.
And this is the first time I think we hear the term victor. Like it gets mentioned in the future books, but it hasn't, like, these people haven't been mentioned before now, I don't believe.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's to guard a harbinger of great change or purpose. Some are not aware of their duty, but they serve nonetheless through numerous mechanisms of fate. Like being at the right place at the right time or introducing the one they've been destined to oversee to someone else. Others are aware and are part of the life of the one they're protecting. Sometimes they're called guardians, and all the time I've heard of them, I've never known there to be more than one to protect any given person. They live like mortals, serving their purpose. They die either in the process of doing that or long after they have served, but when they die, their souls return to Mount Lotho, where the Ere are and are given physical form once more. They remain there until it's time for them to turn. It is their time once again.
Yep. And so she's kind of sitting on that because it's a lot. She ends up falling asleep and wakes up to a 10-year-old boy in front of her. And he's just like, I was watching you sleep.
Call me.
Seriously. Find out it's Reaver in his human form, coming there to basically say Nectus needs you, which means the Fates are here. But before they go in there, they're talking, and then Nyctos kisses her, and we're like, oh, what? But then
And
he
he's
goes
like,
and
it changes
says,
nothing.
yeah, it changes
Okay.
nothing. It's like, cool,
Hot and you're cold,
thanks.
honey. Hot and you're cold. And then they meet the Fates, and who do we see other than Mr. Sir Holland? I don't
We
know why I
also
said
meet the
Mr.
goddess Penelope.
Yeah, well.
No, that's
I'm
not a
burying
well.
the
That's
lead.
a big thing.
I'm burying the lead. I'm sorry.
And then Holland. We find out he's a Fate, and that's where they start to kind of get into their whole, did he step over the line? Did he directly interfere? No, I didn't interfere. Like, we're working on a lot of technicalities and semantics. He couldn't interfere by telling her about the rot or who she was, but gave her so many ominous advice. So that's his like saving grace, I think, is that he never actually said who he was. And so he's able to get away with being like, I didn't actually say anything, but we find out he knew Nyctos's dad, that
I
he
love
was a
that.
friend, and that he even said that he probably would be like dead because he doesn't think if he knew as a fate of what would have happened to his father that he would have been able to stand by and do nothing. He would have interfered, which they're not allowed to do. And so I like that. I think that speaks on the character of Holland that we already knew.
I think it further solidifies how they're the realist. I think this is so funny because supporting characters in this book series are still so significant, and I think that is so like you don't get like some people you like see once or twice, but like other times it's just like this is a fleshed out story. I don't know. I think you see enough of them in this book where it's just like they're significant enough whether or not they're main characters.
Exactly. And then
yeah, Penelope. Oh, we're going to Penelope.
I was gonna say how he tells them how
he took the Ember.
Yeah, Ethos basically saved Nyctos because Nyctos had some of the Ember in him, but he knew that would put him a target to Colas, so he took it out and then took his remaining Embers and put them into the Marielle bloodline. Correct. And made that deal. And so that's why she has it. It says you have the essence of their powers. It's like when a goddess sends a godling, the godling shares their blood, but they're not related to that god or any of that god's bloodline. The only thing that could happen is the essence could recognize its source. And we realize that's why they had that sense of like comfort and familiarity with each other.
Yes.
Is because their souls basically recognized each other.
Exactly. And then Penelope tells them about a vision she had. Like cities forever laid to waste, kingdoms shattered and rebuilt, great and terrible wars, wars between kings, ... and between queens. Has anyone looked at the next title of the book? Anyway, a forest made of trees, the color of blood. But I also saw her. I saw them, a chosen and a descendant of the first. The ether burned brightly in Penelope's eyes as they met mine, a queen of flesh and fire, and him, a king risen from blood and ash, who ruled side by side with man. And they felt right. They felt like hope.
So I think it's easy to say who we think this is talking about. I mean, what king and queen do we know that have titles Queen of Flesh and Fire and King of Blood and Ash? So I love that direct, like there's no guessing. It's like that direct connection to the books.
From the desperation of golden crowns and born of mortal flesh, a great primal power rises as the heir to the lands and seas, the skies and all the realms, a shadow in the ember, a light in the flame, to become a fire in the flesh. When the stars fall from the night, the great mountains crumble into the seas, and old bones raise their swords beside the gods, the false one who will be stripped from glory until two born of the same misdeeds, born of the same great and primal power in the mortal realm. A first daughter with blood full of fire, fated for the once promised king, and the second daughter with blood full of ash and ice, the other half of the future king. Together they will remake the realms as they usher in the end.
And
And
so it will
so
begin. Yep. You want me to read this part? Or do you want to keep reading? Okay.
go for
And
it.
so it will begin. We've heard this part before. This was part of the prophecy we have heard before. And so it will begin with the last chosen blood spilled. The great conspirator, birthed from the flesh and fire of the primals, will awaken as the harbinger and the bringer of death and destruction to the lands gifted by the gods. Beware, for the end will come from the west to destroy the east and lay waste to all which lies between.
It's so funny when you hear the whole thing together, and then the fact that there's only that last part in the other books.
You look at that and you're like, holy shit, they're missing so much. And so that
100%.
makes you excited for the next book because you're like, but
They're
this
about
is
to
one of
find
those
out.
parallels of like, we know something they don't know. And how is that going to affect their stories now?
Yeah, so then they go on to say the first part, the desperation of golden crowns, could that be referencing Roderick Muriel? He was desperate if not yet a king at the time the deal was made. Holland believes so, and Ethos made the deal with Roderick shortly after he learned of the prophecy. But again, so many things can change a prophecy. That can change the meaning and the intention behind every single word. And in the other books, they don't believe in prophecies.
No, not at all. Like it, even in this, Holland said that the fates don't like prophecies.
Yeah.
And so this is something that Penelope herself said that like this doesn't happen often, but she just saw this and knew it was going to be important.
Yeah, and
And
then they talk about like destinies and fates and how there are different threads and paths and strings, and then it's a whole confusing wombo combo of life.
they tell Sarah that she has all these strings and many different paths, but they all end the same. It says your paths have always ended in your death before you even saw 21 years of life. And
Mind you, that's coming up.
Yeah, that's coming up. Nyctos is like, that's not going to happen. And they say many different ways her death could come at your hands. Oh, wait.
Many different ways her death could come at your hands, but this was not intentional.
Yeah, that's because they were saying
Holding
death
a thread.
always finds you one way or the other by the hands of a god or a misinformed mortal, by Colas himself, and even by death. And Nyctos was like, excuse you. And so that's when they're like, there's many different ways. Like, it's not just you. But we find out that because when they
He
were,
adjusted his blood.
yeah, she kind of bit him during one of those times we don't talk about, took literally one drop of blood. And that's all it took. And now basically she's entered into this stage of the culling. And Nyctos is freaking out because she's mortal. Her body is mortal. This ether is supposed to come out. That's too strong for her. And they're like, we don't know if that's going to be what happens or if maybe this is setting into place what was supposed to happen. They said it's an unexpected thread. There's a new thread that's like growing and shrinking. So they don't know what's going to happen. They said it's an unexpected thread, unpredictable. It's the unknown, the unwritten. It's the one thing that not even the fates can predict or control. The only thing that, and it's the only thing that can disrupt fate.
That's love. Love is the one thing that not even fate can contend with. Love is more powerful than fate. Love is even more powerful than what courses through our veins, equally awe-inspiring and terrifying in its selfishness. It can extend a thread by sheer will, becoming that piece of pure magic that cannot be extinguished by biology, and it can snap a thread unexpectedly and prematurely. And then they come to the realization that her body cannot withstand the culling, so they need to have love. The love of the one who would aid her ascension. And Penelope's like, it's not fair to either of you, but life, fate, or love rarely is.
And there's more, because there's always more.
I know.
And this is when we find out, let's see, Holland
The realization.
The realization. Holland tells her, oh, he says, you have had as many outcomes as you have had lives. And she's like, lives? What does that mean? And she says, you are a warrior, Seraphina. You always have been, just like she learned to become. And she's like, Sarah's catching on. She says, no. And he says, you have had many lives. No, you've had many lives, he continued, but it's that one, the first one, that Ethos remembers when he answered Roderick Muriel's summons. He always remembers her. He knew what would come of Colus's actions. Colus was never meant to be the primal of life. Those powers and gifts could not remain in him. What he did was unnatural. Life cannot exist in that state. Ethos knew they would fade, and they have. That is why no primals have been born, why the lands in the mortal realms are beginning to die, why no gods have risen in power. He knew that Colus's actions would be the end of both the realms as we know it.
So this is what he did. He hid the ember of life where it could be safe and where it could grow in power until a new primal was ready to be born, and the one being that could weaken his brother. And she's like, I can't be her. There's no way. I'm not Satoria. My words faded as the rest of what she'd said broke through. All life in both realms has only continued to come into creation because the Muriel bloodline carried that ember. Now she carries the only ember of life in both realms. She is why life continues. Holland's eyes met mine and held. If you were to die, there would be nothing but death in all the kingdoms and all the realms. You are the heir to the lands and seas, skies and realms, a queen instead of a king. You are the primal of life.
And I love that at the end, it's Nyktos who told her that. Because she's like, that doesn't make sense. And he's like, it does.
It does.
It's you. And then he says that, and it's like, oh, I had goosebumps. Like I said, I don't think I've reread this one yet. And so just remembering everything and what's to come, I had literal like goosebumps. And I was sitting here like, oh my gosh.
It's so funny because I know me and Sam have talked about this offline, but we have like a preference, not necessarily a preference, but we have like preferences between the two sets of characters. And I'm so excited because now we go into a War of Two Queens. So now it's like we're taking a break from this book now, or this world, going back to a War of Two Queens, but now we have more of context of what's going on.
We have a lot more information, yeah.
But their story isn't finished. And I'm so excited for like us to go on this ride again together. 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Would
so we're gonna read a War of Two Queens. We heard that mentioned just now. And then we'll end up coming back
A Light in the Flame.
Sarah and Nyktos for
which we also just heard that.
Yeah. We've heard all the titles so far for
Yep.
Yeah. So we're excited. And I think it's great to note that people watching this will probably be like, oh, they already know everything that's gonna happen, and we don't, because these books are still being written.
Like, yeah, the prequel is still not finished. And then
a lot of answer questions about that too.
Yeah, Jennifer has posted, so we're in her community on Facebook, and she's been revealing some teasers and stuff, but she is writing, it looks like she's writing both books in tandem, or like she has one done and she's sharing like she's trying not to spoil what happens in the other. And there are still so many questions, and these books are going to be, I forgot which one, but one of them is going to be heftier. I'm pretty sure the one that's coming out in August is going to be like a bigger book.
Born
because they're
Blood and Ash.
Born of Blood and Ash,
Born
and then
of Blood and Ash,
of,
and then Primal of Blood and Ash.
Yeah. So that is tying up the Flesh and Fire storyline, the book that comes out in August. So you'll see the questions that we still have unanswered, and we're so excited to explore that with you guys, because when the book comes out in August, we'll be reading it for the first time and experiencing it for the first time with you guys. So very excited. Until then, check us out on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all the things, Sippin N Bitchin. And yeah, if you have questions, comments, concerns, or if you want to chat about the books, we can do that too.
I would start reading. 2 weeks is going to go by quick.
Trust us, we know.
I was gonna say, we say as we don't start the books till 2 days before we're supposed to record.
It's okay. We're fine.
Like it to be
it's
fresh.
Fine. But we'll catch you later, bitches, and we hope you enjoyed the episode.
Get your honeydew. We love you.